bones of gigantic creatures embedded in the ground. They're silent witnesses to a lost time. And some of these fossils whisper stories that go far beyond dry science. Stories of agony, the desperate struggle for survival, brutal and tragic endings. I've always found myself drawn to these echoes of the past. One discovery in particular has always haunted me. A place now known as the Drowning Cemetery, where a mass of prehistoric life met its end. A herd of Centrosaurus, numbering in the thousands, perished in a catastrophic flash flood, creating one of the largest dinosaur fossil concentrations ever discovered. They moved together, as they always did. A mass of prehistoric life moving with purpose, with rhythm, with the synchronization of centuries of behavioral evolution. The tragic protagonists of this story are the Centrosaurus, a medium-sized herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 76 million years ago. With its large nasal horn and an impressive ornamented frill, the Centrosaurus was both a symbol of power and, perhaps, a victim of its own evolution. It measured about 6 meters in length and weighed more than 2 tons, adapted to life in groups. And it was precisely this group life that sealed the fate of thousands of them on that fateful day. The site where their bones were discovered, in southern Alberta, Canada, was the stage for one of the largest fossil concentrations ever recorded. The area, once a floodplain near an ancient river, became the collective grave of an entire herd. A tragedy preserved in time. A macabre photograph of a moment of natural horror. The rain fell in a torrential downpour. Within a matter of hours, the water transformed a familiar and safe territory into chaos. Mud, raging currents, and despair. The ground, saturated and unstable, began to collapse. The Centrosaurus, caught by surprise, tried to flee, but the mass escape only generated more destruction. Those at the front were the first to fall. Many were trampled by their panicked companions. Others were swept away by the force of the flood, dragged into lower areas where they were buried alive by the mud that consumed everything. Some younger or already weakened simply could not keep pace with the herd. Death was swift for some, slow and agonizing for others. What remained was a tangled mass of bodies compressed under the weight of tons of flesh, bone, and earth. And then, with time, silence. Decomposition gave way to fossilization. Horror turned into geological record. Millions of years later, humans would excavate that soil with brushes, spatulas, and a patience that rivaled the passage of time itself. Paleontologists would reveal to the world an unprecedented discovery. More than 10,000 bones belonging to a single species in a single location. The Drowning Cemetery had been revealed. Scientists' interpretation was immediate and brutal. This was not the result of deaths occurring over generations. This was a single event, a sudden catastrophe that wiped out an entire herd. Confirmation came from the uniformity of the fossils, the lack of erosion on the bones, and the absence of signs of predation. Everything there screamed urgency, desperation, tragedy. Then there's the story of the Triceratops with an infected bite. Imagine an animal more than 9 meters long, weighing between 6 and 12 tons, slowly walking across the plains of a lost world. Its name, Triceratops horridus. With 3 sharp horns on its face and a protective bony frill rising behind the skull, this giant herbivore was one of the last dinosaurs to inhabit the Earth before the mass extinction event approximately 66 million years ago. But among the many fossils discovered, one tells a particularly dark story marked by pain, survival, and, above all, violence. In this specific fossil, what caught paleontologists' attention was not just a well-preserved skull. What stood out were perforations located in vulnerable areas of the facial bone. Perforations that, when analyzed, revealed a specific pattern, a curvature, a spacing between the marks, a depth compatible with only one living creature of that time, Tyrannosaurus Rex. The powerful jaws of this predator could exert a force of more than 5 tons, enough to crush bone and tear away entire chunks of flesh. But what makes this case so intriguing is that the Triceratops did not die at the moment of the attack. Quite the opposite. The bone surrounding the perforations shows clear signs of irregular growth, a biological reaction to the body's attempt to heal, an inflamed type of bone callus, typical of infection. The Triceratops survived. This discovery changes the traditional narrative of the late Cretaceous food chain. Instead of a simple predation scene, we are faced with a more complex drama. The attack, survival, infection, continuous pain, and finally a slow death. The skull becomes a witness not only to a brutal fight, but also to the resilience of a wounded animal struggling to carry on. The infection that settled into the perforations of the skull was severe. The disorganized bone growth indicates that the body reacted however it could. This inflammatory response is a clear sign that it lived for several weeks after the attack, perhaps even months. Every movement of the jaw, every bite of leaves or branches caused pain. And finally, there's the iconic fossil of Protoeratops versus Velociraptor. In the heart of the Gobi Desert, one of the most inhospitable and arid regions on the planet, lies one of the most dramatic testimonies of the age of dinosaurs. A moment frozen more than 70 million years ago, where life and death became intertwined in a fierce dance. This is the fossil known as the fighting dinosaurs. Protoeratops versus Velociraptor. Two names, two destinies sealed in a confrontation as brutal as it was intimate. On one side, Protoeratops, a medium-sized herbivore with a large bony frill and a beak sharp as scissors. On the other, there's a fossil I keep thinking about. It captures a velociraptor, leg raised, driving its killing claw into the neck of a Protoceratops. And the Protoceratops, in its final act, bites down hard on the attacker's arm. It's an instant of combat, frozen in time. No victor, only mutual death. The sand, rich in minerals, became an extraordinary preserver. The bones, the limbs, the teeth, the claws, everything is there, as if time paused to record nature's raw ferocity. Imagine the arid heart of what is now Montana, 66 million years ago. One of the most brutal confrontations of the Cretaceous period reached its end. The sound of death echoed, muffled by a blow of unimaginable force. There, the legendary Tyrannosaurus Rex met its end in a shocking way. This fossil, nicknamed Pex Rex, tells a story unlike any other. Scientists discovered a massive puncture wound in its neck, precisely where vital arteries, the trachea, and crucial muscles were located. It was as if a spear had been driven straight into the animal's vital systems. But this spear wasn't metal. It was bone, the horn of a Triceratops. I can almost see the scene in my mind. A close-quarters confrontation, a decisive strike, a hunting attempt gone wrong. The greatest terrestrial predator became the prey. Bone fragments around the puncture indicate the impact was deep, piercing soft tissues, blood vessels, likely perforating the trachea. There were no signs of healing. The blow was fatal, the direct cause of death. The fossil Mo 980, Pex rex, was discovered in 1997 by a geologist named Bob Harmon. The nickname honors Lewis Peck, the owner of the ranch where it was found. Since then, Pex rex has fascinated scientists because of its story, its end, its silent message written into every fracture, every shattered bone. Then there are the dinosaur cemeteries, where skeletons are tangled together, as if the animals died trying to escape. They tried to flee, to survive, but there was no time. Sandstorms, violent floods, mudslides, sudden natural forces that transformed the landscape in an instant. Those who lived there were swallowed alive by the environment they once called home. These fossil sites reveal something rare. Moments of prehistoric life frozen in time, not in isolation, but in community. Entire dinosaur families, from juveniles to adults, preserved side by side. Their deaths bear witness to an instant of collective panic. These weren't natural deaths, isolated or spread out over time. They were sudden, catastrophic moments, when nature turned against its own children with devastating fury. In China's Yixian Formation, entire groups of Centrosaurus have been found piled together in layers of volcanic sediment, buried alive by ash from a sudden eruption. In Mongolia, sandstorms engulfed dinosaurs in mid-motion, their poses revealing final attempts to escape. In Madagascar, a mudslide captured an entire group of Majungasaurus, crushed, immobilized, preserved. And in North America, in locations like the Morrison Formation, the remains of Diplodocus and other sauropods appear grouped in patterns suggesting entire herds were wiped out by sudden floods. These sites show us how dinosaurs lived, how they organized themselves into herds, families, and social structures, and how even in groups they were vulnerable to the power of nature. Consider the Pachyrhinosaurus, crushed in a stampede. In the petrified silence of time, a tragedy unfolded beneath the darkened skies of ancient North America. These bones belong to Pachyrhinosaurus, a gregarious herbivore whose head was adorned with thick bony bosses rather than sharp horns. But it's not the animal's appearance that draws attention. It's the way it died. Paleontologists excavating a vast rock formation in Alberta encountered a macabre scene. Dozens of Pachyrhinosaurus fossils stacked atop one another, with bones crushed and fractured. Imagine being crushed, not by a landslide or some falling debris, but by the weight of your own kind. That's the image that struck me when I first encountered the story of Pachyrhinosaurus herd death. Compression marks on their skeletons tell a terrifying tale. These peaceful herbivores, likely startled by a predator or some natural disaster, were driven into a frenzy. The bones speak of a chaotic stampede, a desperate attempt to flee. Some fell, others stumbled, and the combined weight of tons of flesh and bone became a deadly force for the weakest among them. What's particularly haunting is that the fossil record includes juveniles, adults, even hatchlings. This suggests a family or social unit, wiped out in an instant. Tyrannosaurus, we believe, cared for their young, perhaps protecting them in defensive circles. But against sheer panic, no defense could hold. Not all died immediately, though. Healed fractures in some fossils show that certain individuals survived for a time, even with broken bones. Others, however, bore the marks of acute, lethal trauma. The microfractures reveal the force came from all directions, the bodies compressed within a living mass of desperation. Paleontologists call this herd death, a natural catastrophe that, ironically, preserves fossils so well. Then there's the story of the Carnotaurus with the fractured jaw. Imagine this feared predator roaming South America 70 million years ago, a meat-eating bull, one of the largest and most agile theropods of its time. But even kings have weaknesses, and sometimes the silent fossil tells a story beyond strength and ferocity. A story of pain, struggle, and silent defeat. This specific Carnotaurus fossil revealed a deep, unhealed fracture in its jaw, a break that would have compromised its ability to hunt, to feed, to survive. It wasn't a superficial wound. It was a severe rupture in the lower jawbone, causing extreme pain and making even basic movements difficult. The absence of any healing was the first clue. When an animal survives a fracture, the bone shows evidence of new tissue growth, calluses, structural adjustments. But in this fossil, the fracture was raw, as if it had occurred just before the animal's death. The conclusion is grim. The Carnotaurus died shortly after suffering the injury, likely from starvation. Unable to fully open its jaw or apply the force needed to kill prey, it was condemned to waste away. Imagine its suffering. Every attempt to bite, every movement of the jaw sending waves of pain through its body. Each step slower, more hesitant. A predator transformed into a shadow, pushed out of territorial disputes, abandoned by prey, perhaps even by its own kind. And then there's the Tyrannosaurus Rex, with bite marks on its bones, inflicted by another Tyrannosaurus Rex. Here, in Montana, lies a fossil from 66 million years ago, a colossal predator that reigned as the supreme sovereign of the Cretaceous, Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard king. But even kings face challenges. The tooth marks on its bones don't belong to a smaller predator. They match the robust, deeply penetrating dentition of another tyrannosaur. It forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about their behavior. Cannibalism? A territorial dispute? The remains of a meal where opportunity outweighed social restraint? Tyrannosaurus Rex mead 13 meters in length, nearly 4 meters tall at the hips, with a jaw capable of exerting up to 6 tons of pres. It wasn't merely a predator, it was a bone crusher. Its banana-shaped teeth could crush not only the teeth of Tyrannosaurus Rex, they left a story etched in bone. I've seen the images of those fossil remains found in Montana, and it's chilling to think about the violence they represent. Bite marks on the skull, the jaw, arms, legs. Paleontologists can see the precise moment another tyrannosaur pressed its teeth against the bone, tearing away flesh, fragmenting the carcass. It's a time capsule, a glimpse into a behavior that no textbook could ever fully capture. But what was really going on here? Was Tyrannosaurus Rex actually eating its own kind? And if so, why? The most widely accepted hypothesis is opportunistic cannibalism. In harsh environments like the late Cretaceous, food scarcity might have driven even the largest predators to feed on the bodies of their dead. It's not unheard of in the animal kingdom. Crocodiles, sharks, even bears sometimes resort to cannibalism when they need to. Why would it have been any different 66 million years ago? There's another, even more dramatic possibility, though. A fight between two Tyrannosaurus Rex individuals.